Welcome to the Passive House podcast, brought to you by Passive House Accelerator, a catalyst for zero carbon building. For news, stories, and connections from all flavours of Passive House, check out the articles, videos, and more at passivehouseaccelerator.com. Sign up to receive regular updates about events, join the community forum, and of course, attend the weekly online Global Passive House Happy Hour. Now, here's this week's Passive House podcast. Welcome back to another episode of the Passive House podcast. I'm Matthew Cutler-Welsh. I'm coming to you from Auckland in New Zealand.
And I'm Zach Semke, coming to you from Seattle in Washington State.
And things are definitely hotting up down here. We're getting into the hot part of our summer. And I did actually catch up with a couple of people who are in passive houses down in Christchurch where they got to 36 degrees. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, 36 Celsius. You got any ideas what that is?
Well, I know that 28 is 82. That's how always.
Right.
So that 30. So that means that's 100 in the low hundreds.
It's getting up to the 100 Fahrenheit. Yeah. And this particular house didn't have any form of mechanical cooling. So it was a good test. Apparently it was about 22 degrees, 23 inside. It's good test of passive house, and we are destined to see more of that, particularly down here in Australia and New Zealand, of passive houses being put to the test during some pretty severe summers. How are things in your part of the world?
Well, they're good. The temperatures are very different. They're they're 37, but Fahrenheit. and rainy. So it's the kind of the winter weather in Seattle is wet and cold. Actually, it's sunny right now. But the other thing that's happening is that there is so much developing at the federal level on climate action that I can't keep up, which is pretty exciting. Like every day we have a new flurry of executive action going on. So,
well, welcome back to the Paris Climate Agreement. It's nice to have you.
It's good to be back
in the tent.
It's good to be back.
Yeah. But as we said in I think last week and previously on the show, that's fantastic. It's all really good. And what else is really, really good is the action on the ground, which I think the whole community here is part of that, and giving confidence to our elected officials, no matter where we are. Is partly due to the work that we do on the ground and with the local community.
Yeah, no, that's so true. And the fact is that even though Trump announced his intention to withdraw, he had to wait until the day after the election to actually execute it.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, there has been a lot of local and I guess what the term is subnational action by states and cities and all sorts of organizations that formed to take up the slack, and the whole "We Are Still In" movement. So
absolutely.
there have been some important climate wins, even not at the federal level, but at the local and state level. So there's just now the potential to accelerate all of that with federal action. So good
and
stuff.
It's happening not just in America, not just down here in Australia and New Zealand, but all around the world. And I'm very pleased this week to have a interview with someone from Europe, because I know that time zones are a little bit tricky, so we don't always get a lot of our friends from the UK and Central Europe on the Global Happy Hour, because it's the middle of the night there for them.
That's right.
But we do, I know, have a lot of people who listen to us from Europe and who are keeping an eye on and part of the accelerator from that part of the world. So this week's featured guest is Anton Dobrevski, who was born and raised in Bulgaria. And he says that the houses aren't great there, not very well insulated. I'm not going to get into a competition about who's got the worst houses because that's a race to the bottom. But needless to say, it sounds like things in Bulgaria. Bulgaria is not Germany. Let's put it that way. It's very far east to start with. My European geography is not fantastic, but it's across the other side of Europe. Anton was intending to actually go to Germany for university and to study architecture, but he ended up in the Netherlands at Delft University of Technology, where he learned about energy efficiency and the fact that it's really important. And it was, in fact, during one of his first assignments as a student that his class was advised to follow the Passive House standard, which sounded great to him and his peers, only that he found it kind of hard to get hold of some practical resources and information on how to apply the Passive House standard to design. And that was part of the genesis, I guess, for him to create the Passive House School. Anton believes firmly that the next generation of architects does not necessarily get taught the specifics of how to design energy efficiency buildings, despite them getting more and more interested in that space. He also believes that, despite what we talk about on a regular basis here at the Accelerator, there are still a lot of architects and designers around the world who have not heard of Passive House. So these are the inspirations behind starting the Passive House School. And a unique feature of the school is that it started completely online, and that was so that Anton could reach a truly international audience. So 3 years on and one global pandemic later, the Passive House School is growing and succeeding very well. And I think it was a testament to Anton to get it up and running when he did. So I started out the interview by asking Anton how it was growing up in Bulgaria and how he got into architecture and Passive House in the first place. So thank you, Anton. It's great to talk with you. Let's start at the beginning in Bulgaria. For people that haven't been there or haven't spent time or know much about it, tell us a little bit about how growing up in Bulgaria.
It was really, really nice. It's a really beautiful country, beautiful nature, mountains, sea, rivers. Basically, we have everything there. Also, we have really strong culture, and so yeah, I can say that my childhood there was really. I have beautiful memories from back then.
Does it suffer from being a smaller country or not well known, or is that an advantage for countries like that in Europe, do you think?
I wouldn't say it's an advantage, but we have different problems which are within the country, I would say, which stop us from getting more exposure, let's say like that.
Mm-hmm. And yeah. How would you describe the building stock and houses?
Really, really bad. Like it's there's no insulation. There is there are houses which are 50, 60 years old without maintenance. Also, the flats that are even currently being built, they don't comply to any energy efficiency standards. But also, the worst thing is that currently people who are studying architecture, friends of mine, they're in Bulgaria, they don't know about energy efficiency. They're not teaching them at university about energy efficiency. And so the future generation of architects who are being currently educated, they don't know about these principles and how to design and build energy efficient buildings. So to me, that's the big problem.
So you studied architecture at Delft University, and also was master, and then you went on to do a Master of Science. Is that standard practice there, or is that you just wanted to learn a bit more?
Yeah, so in order to become an architect, because this has been my goal for years already, and that's also how I got introduced, let's say, to the Pascal standard. In order to become an architect, you have to do the bachelor's first, and then you have to do the master's, and then you have to work for 2 years in an architectural practice and follow a special course through which you go through the different steps in the building. So the first phase of the design, then the technical drawings, and then the building of the construction of the building. So that's what this course involves. And after 2 years of practice, then you become an architect.
And you've gone through that process because you've worked in architectural practice for a little while. Did you go through registration as well?
No. I'm currently doing my master's in architecture at the Delft University of Technology. But before I started with the master's, I worked for almost 1 year at an architectural company here in the Netherlands. And I did few of these courses or lectures. I followed few of them, but I'm not registered yet.
Now, you mentioned that you came across Passive House during your bachelor's course. To what level was it taught there?
So this wasn't the first time I heard about the Pascal standard, but let's say they mentioned it, and also here in the Netherlands, the Pascal standard is quite, I would say, important for the educational institutions in architecture. And even for our first course, we started learning about energy efficiency. So our very first lecture in the bachelor program was about energy efficiency. And for example, for one of the projects that we had to design, our tutor advised us to follow the Passive House principles, but then they also realized that we don't have all the necessary knowledge to design a building which will comply with the Passive House certification criteria, because they teach us few segmentary, I would say, principles, but not the same way as it is taught in the certified Passive House designer courses, for example.
What took you to the Netherlands in the first place? Why did you go to university there instead of Bulgaria?
So the story begins when I was back in high school in Bulgaria, and I was studying in the German high school. And there, everything that I was studying was in German. We had German teachers, so they came from Germany in order to teach us. And in the end, I also got the German diploma. And my initial idea was to go and study architecture in Germany. Like for me, Bulgaria was never an option to study there because of the level of education. And that's why I wanted to go to Germany. But then I also wanted to be in one of the best universities in the world. And when I checked which are those in Europe, I found Delft University of Technology, and I thought, okay, that's a good option. But back then I needed to have both English certificate and Dutch certificate. So these were the two requirements in order to get admitted. And my certificate was going to expire when the English certificate was going to expire. So I thought I told myself I'm not gonna study both for an English certificate and then learn Dutch. That's no way. But then during one of the classes, the teacher of the class told us that all the people who are going to register for the university or apply for universities in the UK and the Netherlands have to tell her so that we can fill in forms. And this was like 6 months before I thought was the official application. And I asked her, do we have to apply now for these countries? And she said yes. And this was the moment when I decided, okay, I'm going to go to Delft. And so I came to Delft. I applied. I got admitted. However, I had still to learn Dutch, and then I had to choose whether I have to wait for 1 year and learn Dutch for 1 year while I'm here, or they also offered an intensive course which was for just less than 2 months to learn Dutch, but it was like from 0 to C1 level, which is proficiency, because the program is in the whole bachelor's is in Dutch, and
So I've got to ask you, how many languages do you speak now?
I speak 4 languages and almost, like, I would say 4.5.
I mean, your English is incredible given where you've come from, and also my geography, my European geography is pretty bad, but Bulgaria and the Netherlands, they're not even close. They're pretty much at the opposite ends of Europe.
Yeah, that's
There's a
right.
long way between those. It's not like you're just hopping next door. So you've definitely moved around a fair bit and got a really good taste of the whole of Europe there.
Yeah, well, I'm only flying from Bulgaria to the Netherlands. It takes like 2.5 hours, the flight.
Mm.
So for me, whether it was Germany or the Netherlands, it's not so. It wasn't big of a
Doesn't
difference.
make much difference.
Yeah.
Now tell us about your father's influence.
My father has a really, really big influence on me when it comes to the passive house standard. So he was also the first person who introduced me to the standard. And that was back in 2010. But back then I was 12 or 13 years old. So I was really, really young. And for me at the time,
I
what
think
I
you're
knew
still
about.
really, really young, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah. But back then for me, the passive house standard was okay. My father's working on that. And that's everything that I knew. But then this was also the time when I decided that I want to become an architect. And then a few years later, I started looking into how can I learn about architecture? How can I get involved in even before getting into university? And so I started learning, for example, the architectural softwares that like Revit. I found a few different courses online, and then also I talked to my father about the Pascal standard. And the more and more he was telling me about the standard, the more and more I got interested in it. And so that's when everything started with me and my and how I got, let's say, involved in the standard.
Was your father a builder or an architect?
My father has a construction company. He's had it for already more than 25 years, and he is not an architect, unfortunately, because in order to become an architect, you have to do the full years of or 5 years of studying. But yeah, he's been involved in the industry for a long, long time, and currently he's becoming more involved in more energy efficient buildings industry, like Zender and Proclima. He's the supplier of these components in
You
Bulgaria.
mentioned that the housing is quite bad in Bulgaria. Is there a a growing market for more energy efficient houses, and is passive house starting to gain some traction there? Because it seems if the housing stock is that bad, the market's bad, it's a bit of a leap of faith for your father to start up Bulgaria Passive House.
Yeah, it definitely was. So back then in 2010, there were almost no people who knew about the standard. And once he found Passive House Bulgaria, he started popularizing the standard there. But even currently, not enough people, I would say, are interested and are building passive house buildings in Bulgaria. And the biggest issue is the concern of people that these houses cost too much, and they're not aware of the fact that it's a long-term investment. But I would say it's also people in Bulgaria don't tend to make long-term investments. They just think about the short term.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why.
What motivated you to start Passive House School?
Firstly, the fact that in a lot of countries, just like in Bulgaria, the next generation of architects is not thought about how to design energy efficient buildings. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing was that in a lot of professionals around the world haven't even heard about the passive house standard, let alone to know what it is and to build passive house buildings. So the main idea of the passive house school and the reason why I decided to start it was to raise awareness all around the world and to educate as many people possible in this field.
Mm-hmm. And how's it? Well, describe what the school is. How does it? Where is it? How does it run?
We try to do everything possible online. So this was also our primary goal, so that it can be accessible and affordable to people from all over the world. And so, for example, because we offered three different services: educational, consulting, and certification of passive house buildings. And we focus for now primarily on the educational services. And the thing is that we are currently developing also new online courses. Recently, we released um, an introductory online course, and also because we're working with the Passive House Institute, we're using their materials for the certified Passive House designer courses. And recently, they allowed also due to COVID-19 to use these materials for online courses, which is really useful for people to join online, because previously we organized these big courses in Bulgaria, and people came from the UK, from Iraq to Bulgaria in order to do the course. But now everything is online.
And do you have to align with the examination times for the Passive House Institute, or can people do the courses whenever?
So these courses, the Certified Passive House Designer courses, they are organized on specific dates and they take place live. So how we do it is that we have live classes online, and people can join from all over the world. They watch the class, and after that they have access to the recording, so that they can also fully prepare for the exam, which is around 1 month um, after the course itself. And how we do it currently, we can organize the courses at any time, and also the exams. We coordinate the exams with the Passive House Institute, because we are exam providers. So the exam is made by the Passive House Institute, but we organize it. And in the end, also the certificate is issued by the Passive House Institute themselves. So we schedule it, we organize it, and then it again takes place online.
But you also do, like you said, an introduction, so Passive House 101. How long is that course?
Yeah, that's right. So the Passive House 101 course is fundamental. So it focuses on the fundamental principles of the Passive House standard. And in this course, people can enroll at any time, and they can watch it at their own time. And it is pre-recorded. So once they enroll, they have access to the course. They can watch the lectures as many times as they want, and do it as fast as they want. And the whole course, so only the videos are around 7 hours of lectures. We've also prepared more than 100 questions so that people can solidify their learnings. And the idea is in general to teach the basic but also most important principles. And then if people are interested to become professionals, then they would consider joining the Certified Passive House Designer course.
Yeah, I think that's a really valuable resource, because without that, it's quite a big step right up to the Certified Passive House course. So it's really good to have that introduction, because that could be useful to give to others who aren't even looking at going down the full certification route, but just would be useful for them to know a bit more about what Passive House is, if they're an architect or a consultant or an engineer.
Yeah, that's right. And also for homeowners, if someone wants to get a Passive House building, then this course is a valuable resource so that they can be aware of what are they going to get, what are the benefits of the standard, how to look for Passive House professionals. Because there are even a lot of people out there who claim to be making Passive House buildings, but they've never done any trainings, or they are not even using the PHPP software, which is the Passive House planning package.
Yeah,
the main software.
Give us some numbers to describe the size and how the school's going. When did you kick it off to start with?
So officially, the school was founded in 2018. That was the time when it became, let's say, independent from Passive House Bulgaria, because in the beginning everything was in one place, etc. And then it took some time to take it off, to organize one course, and then half a year later we organized another course, and And yeah, now with the online courses, it's becoming more and more popular, and more people are joining.
Do you know how many countries or how many people have gone through courses so far?
Yeah, so in total, that's also counting our previous experience, we've had more than 200 people joining the Certified Passive House Designer courses only. And yeah, taking into account also like webinars, 1-day courses that we've organized, and just a few smaller events, probably more than 400 or even 500 people, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
That's how
And
many. Yeah.
Is it mostly people around Europe, or where have people come from to attend those courses?
So mostly people from around Europe. For example, we've had the first certified passive house designers from Romania, from Macedonia, from Cyprus, but also from Iraq and Georgia, the country, not the U.S. state. And
Yeah.
also, hopefully, now from Saudi Arabia, we will have also the first one in the first certified passive house designer in the world. But we've also had people from the UK, from Australia, from New Zealand, from the US, Ireland, Kuwait.
That's great. It's
So
it's so good to have. I mean, people are getting more and more used to doing things online,
yeah.
particularly this year. But just to have that that spread, and it seems that you've created a really good link there between Central Europe and the Middle East, and there's obviously some of those countries going through transition in lots of ways, but building more energy efficient houses in those climates be quite fascinating work to be involved in, I imagine.
Yeah, for sure. And also more and more people from these countries are even reaching out to us and asking like how they can take part in these courses, etc. And now also the knowledge about passive house buildings in warmer climates is getting further developed, and they've built also the first passive house building. This was years ago, but the first passive house building in the United Arab Emirates, which is really hot climate. And yeah, we're currently also working on the certification of buildings in Cyprus, in Iraq as well. So these are also warm climates, and yeah, we're trying to build up more and more knowledge for this type of environments.
Hey, well, good luck with everything, Anton. It's fantastic what you've done. I think it's a great resource to have the Passive House School up and running, and also those other services that you do with the certification as well. So keep up the good work, and keep spreading the word and educating people.
Thank you very much. Thanks a lot, and also for you as well. Good luck with the podcast, and keep spreading the word.
And that was Anton Dobrevski of the Passive House School. How did you? What did you take out from that interview, Zach?
Well, really impressed with Anton's energy and what he's accomplished. I mean, he's a young guy, and the fact that it sounds like the fire for architecture that was lit in him when he was young was partly lit because of the passive house work that his dad was doing. So, and I imagine that kind of motivation for getting involved in architecture is becoming more and more common among young practitioners. So, I think that, he talked about being frustrated about the young architects in Bulgaria, in particular, not necessarily understanding or being connected with energy efficiency. But another part of the story is that he's at a very young age making a big impact on information sharing and education around high performance building. I think thanks to that early motivation and spark that his dad helped, create. So it's good to see that kind of the intergenerational piece happening, and also inspiring to see that sort of that energy and ingenuity and making, building up this institution, the Passive House School.
I think it's really good to recognize and just think about what it must have been like for Anton's dad, because he talks about how houses aren't fantastic in Bulgaria. And I can imagine, you bringing in things like air tightness membranes or these crazy new fancy weather tightness membranes, and then bringing in really high end high performance ventilation systems with Zender must have been a real leap of faith and bit of a risk. So I really take my hat off to people like Anton's father before him, and other early adopters around the world who we look at back at these things now and just accept them as really good practice. But if you're the first one introducing these concepts into a market that's never seen anything like it, it's quite something and can be quite a big risk.
Right. I mean, when the baseline is our buildings that have no insulation. I do think that being in the U.S., I've taken for granted kind of the base code, and feel very impatient and feel like that code needs to get better and better and better, and it's why it's so slow. And there was just an article in the New York Times about the role that the National Association of Home Builders are playing in trying to make it slower. But that is it. Insulation is required in our building code, right?
Yeah.
So the delta, is another one of those like, oh yeah, that's right. The delta between baseline and passive house here is significantly smaller than the delta in Bulgaria. So you're right. Leap of faith, lots of leadership and courage professional courage to make that leap.
And I think that is useful to those who are having conversations now with people who are coming across Passive House for the first time. And there are plenty of people who haven't heard of Passive House, and that'll be a continuing challenge for those of us who are in this space, to just remind ourselves where people are coming from and to be gentle, but also to know that people have faced similar challenges in the past and have succeeded. And it's only by having those conversations and gradually convincing people and showing them the science and having a bit of faith that will bring a lot more people and make things like air tightness, like good ventilation, good design, simplified design, make them more common practice, and then everyone will just want them, not just because they're passive house, but because of the great outcomes that they achieve.
Yeah. And Anton is somebody who recognizes that potential, recognizes how far we have to go, and then is doing something really tangible and effective to change it.
I like in terms of the content, I really like the introduction of introductory courses, because that's something that the Passive House Institute hasn't done traditionally. They've done the certified course and then the tradesperson course, which are really full-on investments. It's a week or more of your time and a bit of investment from financially as well. And then you got to sit this big, scary exam. And there's sort of nothing. It hasn't been anything in the middle between nothing and full-on certified professional. So I think that's fulfilling a great need to have some introductory courses for people who just want to find out a little bit and start their journey down that path. So take my hat off to Anton to seeing that, because others are following that lead now and also providing introductory courses, as are other institutions and other providers doing online content, kind of as a necessity after the last 12 months. But it's Anton's motivation for that wasn't because anything to do with COVID, because that wasn't around then. It was simply just to spread the word to a more international audience. And he's having, by all means, by all accounts, great success, including around the Middle East, which is, I think, it's a really interesting area for a whole bunch of reasons, but I'm interested in it climate-wise in terms of getting the industry up and running and thinking about passive house as a solution for building in really hot, extreme environments.
Yeah. You mentioned that there are other practitioners following suit, and also I think PHI has followed suit as well.
Yeah.
So I think that's the great thing about having a lot of different players in the space, is that we can learn, we can see what other organizations are doing at all different levels.
Yeah.
And drive some inspiration. I think that before the last international conference, there was some cool package that PHI created with an intro. You could do an intro, and that the investment in that intro class could apply to conference registration, which is a cool idea. Like give people the crash course before they consume the conference, because some of those conference sessions can be really overwhelming. I remember my first PHI conference about like 10 years ago, and it was pretty, you're thrown into the deep end if you're new to it all. Yeah, definitely. But yeah, the Middle Eastern connection is a really interesting one. And at the accelerator, I've heard from a practitioner in Iraq who is really eager to get his hands on resources and help, and haven't felt that I could be very, very, very helpful, from my seat in Seattle. So it's great that there is it is closer, and that Anton is making those connections and hopefully facilitating practice in the Middle East.
Yeah.
So
and everywhere.
Right.
So much available.
Right. No, totally. Not just the Middle East. Yeah, absolutely.
So much available online these days. It's amazing. Speaking of which, what else is happening online, Zach? What else we got coming up?
Yeah. So at the accelerator, we have this coming week our Construction Tech Tuesday, which is Wednesday in New Zealand and Australia. Will feature one of the co-hosts actually from the Happy Hour, and a top practitioner of Passive House in North America, Prudence Ferreira. She's with BR+A now, and she's going to be addressing the topic, how to avoid passive house, and I'll say pH ups. so that'll be, I think, she's definitely seen lots and lots and lots of projects, very big and small, and I think we'll have a lot of fun anecdotes and examples to share. And then on Wednesday, the Happy Hour will feature Jesper Cruz, whose company Maine Passive House, it was one of the first builders of passive house in Maine, and he, like many practitioners, decided to jump in with both feet and make a passive house happen for himself. So he's been retrofitting, or has retrofitted his home, and this is a multi-year passive house retrofit story. So that should be very entertaining and interesting. And we're at the accelerator, we're moving into retrofit month. That's what February is going to be, retrofit month for us. Yeah. So on February 15th, we will be hosting a passive house retrofit summit with a number of luminaries in the kind of looking at the way that policy can drive retrofits and the results of those policy moves. So we're going to have folks from NYSERDA, from Mass Save or Mass CEC in Massachusetts, and other institutions there to talk about that, and practitioners as well to share their experiences. And of course, lots of educational stuff going on, and we'll share a link to all that's happening from folks at PHI and NEPHN and FIAS and Passive House Canada and all sorts of other groups.
Very cool. As always, a lot going on, and don't forget those conference abstract submissions as well. Passive House International Conference open now for submissions for abstracts. So if you do want to be involved in that at the presenter side of things, make sure you get onto it. That's pretty much it for this week. Thank you very much for listening in. And don't forget, you can contact us by emailing podcast@passivehouseaccelerator.com. We'd love to hear from you with any thoughts, comments, feedback about the show, or suggestions for future guests as well. Thank you very much again for listening and really appreciate your time. I'm Matthew Cutler-Welsh, coming to you from Auckland.
I'm Zach Semke from Seattle. Thanks, everybody.
See you next week.
All of the work of Passive House Accelerator, including the Passive House podcast, would be impossible without the support of our sponsors. So we want to take a moment to give a hearty thank you to our sponsors. Our founding sponsors are 475 High Performance Building Supply, Baxt Ingwe Architects, Glavel Foam Glass Gravel, Minotaur, Mitsubishi Electric Train HVAC US, Partel, RDH Building Science, Stocorp, and Zola Windows. Our stakeholder partner is NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. Thank you.